Welcome back to the channel, guys. Now today we got a story from WCCF Tech about GPU market share, and it says NVIDIA's discrete GPU market share climbed to 72.8% in the third quarter of 2017, and AMD's market share dropped from 30% to 27%. And they said a PC gaming demand leads to rise in add-in board partner shipments. So the latest GPU market report has been published by John Petty Research and shows that NVIDIA has gained the lead in market share over their rival AMD. The report is for the third quarter of 2017, and a lot of developments were made during the time period in the GPU industry, so let's take a look. And basically it shows you that desktop PC and AIBs have actually gone up from Q2 2017 in Q3. So as you can see, both desktop and AIBs have gone up, which is a good sign. It's showing that people are obviously interested in gaming PCs and desktop PCs over laptop PCs, and also that people are actually building their own PCs rather than going through some sort of OEM or ready-made built PCs, which is really good because I think those are better value. To build your own PC is a lot better value in my opinion than to go through an OEM, and laptops are just kind of shitty when it comes to gaming. So it says here, while crypto mining has had its fair share of influence in the discrete GPU market during Q3 2017, it wasn't as extensive as the previous quarter. That's mainly because profitability has kind of dropped on Ethereum a lot. It's a lot harder to mine now too. And it says reports mention that crypto mining demand is slowly dwindling and may cause decrease in GPU market share in coming quarters, but gaming is here to save the day. That's right. Gaming will always be there, which is what I think a lot of companies are kind of forgetting, which is that mining is a bit of a bubble and it can burst at any moment. But it's pretty clear that gaming is always going to be here, and gamers are always going to buy new hardware no matter what. Sure, it'll be in seasonal periods, but it won't be as volatile, and they tend to stick with a brand, gamers, as opposed to miners. Miners do not stick with brands, they just go for whatever is the most profitable with the least amount of power draw, so yeah. As always, PC gaming remains the main contributor for the biggest jumps in the graphics market. We've seen it in the overall GPU market share report that came out last month, and it continues to play a major role in discrete graphics industry too, with a range of AAA titles launching the last quarter, such as Destiny 2, Hellblade, COD World War II, Star Wars Battlefront, and the esports competitive market staying strong with titles such as PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, Overwatch, and FIFA 18. And here's the interesting bit. NVIDIA and AMD GPU market share from Q3 2017. And looking at it, as you can see, AMD's market share this quarter is 27.2%. Last quarter, it was 30%. So just in one quarter, AMD's market share dropped 3%. That's a whole lot. And this time last year, they actually had 2% larger market share, almost actually more than 2.5%. And NVIDIA's has risen 72.8%, and last quarter it was 69%, and this time last year they actually had less market share. So this is quite telling. And overall here we get a graph which shows you over time what has kind of happened. So when the GTX 900 series came out, they had 60% market share. It rose as high as almost 82%, and it's kind of steadied out with GTX 10 series. As you can see, they're around about 72, and they started with 70. So as you can see, NVIDIA is clearly in the lead, and even though RX Vega released, AMD's market shares dropped, and it's almost at a low again. I mean, it's not going to get quite as low as 18%, but 27.2 is the lowest since the RX 400 series launched. And that is not a good sign at all. So it's showing that even though Vega was actually a pretty good architecture, because it didn't compete with the 1080 Ti, and because Vega 56 loses to the 1070 Ti and the Vega 64 loses to the GTX 1080, it's kind of hard for AMD to remain competitive. The other problem here is that AIB AIB market share has also increased, right? But Vega, right now at least, or at least during Q4 and Q3, only had like stock cards. No AIB cards are on the market. So this is a huge problem because NVIDIA has AIB cards for the GTX 1080, the 1080 Ti, the 1070 Ti, and the GTX 1070. So, people want those custom coolers. They want, multiple fans. They want the ability for the fans to stop working when the card isn't being put under load. And RX Vega doesn't have any of those things. The best thing it has is water cooling, but even then the water cooling is so expensive, and it's only from, AMD themselves that it's just not a valuable option at all. So yeah, overall, I think this is bad news for AMD. And it's very good news for NVIDIA, obviously, because it's showing that they're maintaining their market share and that Vega did not help AMD at all. A lot of people are saying AMD is going to be helped by Vega, but I just don't see it. Adored TV doesn't see it. None of the YouTubers see it. And as you can see here, the market is not reflecting that. People keep saying the Vega 56 is out of stock or Vega 64 is out of stock, and that may be the case, but I think supply is so low that demand is actually high enough to actually beat the supply. So even though demand looks high, the supply might actually be just so low that the demand is just looking really high. And I think that's the case. I mean, I could be wrong on that, and I'm happy to be wrong on that because, again, I want GPU competition. But at this stage, I don't see it. And this is a really bad sign. It's a really bad sign. Hopefully, AMD can bring it back with their next series of GPUs, but I really highly doubt that, just because NVIDIA looks like they're so far ahead of the curve, especially at the very high end. I can't see how Vega's successor, can even compete with the next, top tier GPU from NVIDIA, because not only does NVIDIA have the performance advantage, but they have the performance per watt advantage, and that's a huge problem when you're at the higher end. A lot of these cards eat a lot of power, and if they're eating a lot of power and they're not performing as good, the only option is really to pick NVIDIA. So yeah, but it says, looking at GPU performance figures posted over AnandTech, the RX Vega launched last quarter, and as such, for just 1 month, the sales are recorded in this report. It will definitely affect the Q4 report, but NVIDIA, on the other hand, introduced the 1070 Ti, and that isn't in here. So, both cards trade blows with each other, but the Vega 56 supply and pricing issues might have affected the full potential of its market performance. And I agree on that. There's no AIB models for Vega 56. The supply is quite low. There's pricing issues even when you can find one. And just the mining craze could have affected it too, because 1070 Ti isn't that much better in mining than a normal 1070 or a 1080. And on top of that, Vega just is really good at mining because it's got a lot of compute power. Not so good in games, but very good for mining. And a lot of those miners are going to buy the card, they're going to use it as much as they possibly can, and then they're just going to sell it or throw it away, and it's not going to really be much of an issue for them. So yeah, this is bad news, but we'll see what happens a year from now. It'll be very interesting once again. But yeah, I don't really see the future being that much better for AMD. But you guys can tell me in the comments section below what you think, and subscribe to the channel if you want more news like this, even though it is quite, kind of bad news. But, things can change so quickly in this market. I mean, as you can see here, Q2 2015, AMD had 18% market share. They almost doubled it by Q2 2016. So, in a year, a lot can happen. And I'm pretty confident that AMD can get their act together and hopefully bring out something that's way more competitive. But the chances of that happening are very low. But I'm always optimistic.